There is one name in the world of luxury fashion that carries more weight than almost any other. One house whose approval means something different from every other approval in the industry. One brand whose front row is not just a seat, but a statement. A declaration that you have arrived not just as a celebrity, but as a genuine icon of style and influence. That name is Dior. And for years, Meghan Markle has been circling it, wearing it on magazine covers, being photographed in it at major moments, watching the door and wondering whether it would ever fully open. In November 2025, she appeared on the cover of Harper's Bazaar wearing Dior from Jonathan Anderson's Spring-Summer 2026 collection. One of the most prestigious magazine covers in the world. One of the most prestigious fashion houses in the world. A moment that looked, from the outside, like the relationship had finally arrived. But inside the fashion industry, the conversation was more complicated. Because the story of Meghan and Dior is not a simple love story. It is a story of ambition, of perception, of the gap between the image someone projects and the acceptance that the industry decides to give. It is a story about what it costs to be taken seriously by fashion's most powerful gatekeepers. And it is a story about whether any amount of talent, beauty, or determination can buy what the fashion world ultimately decides on its own terms to give or to withhold. Tonight, we are telling the full verified story of Meghan Markle and the world of luxury fashion. What she has built, what she has worn, what the industry has said about her publicly and privately, and what the Dior question really reveals about where she stands in one of the most exclusive circles on Earth. This is Royal Report Daily, and tonight, we are talking fashion. Welcome to Royal Report Daily, your #1 destination for real royal news, verified investigations, and the stories the palace doesn't want you to find. I'm your host, and if you are new here, subscribe right now and hit that notification bell, because what we cover on this channel, you will not find anywhere else. Every single week, we go deeper, we go further, and we go to places the mainstream media is too afraid to touch. Tonight is one of those nights. Let's get into it. Let us start with what Meghan has actually worn. Because her fashion record, the verified, photographed, documented record, is genuinely impressive. From the moment she entered public life as Harry's girlfriend in 2016, Meghan demonstrated a consistent and sophisticated approach to dressing. She understood what clothes communicate. She understood how to use fashion as a language. And she did it deliberately, thoughtfully, and almost always effectively. Her royal wedding dress in May 2018 was created by Claire Waite-Keller for Givenchy, a 5-meter silk train, a bateau neckline, an immediately iconic silhouette. Keller described the collaboration as a very personal girlfriend relationship. She said it was a pleasure to create in a very private way. It became, by any measure, one of the most discussed wedding dresses of the 21st century. Since leaving the royal family, Meghan's style has evolved into what fashion editors consistently describe as California cool. Monochromatic sets, relaxed tailoring, high-end accents worn with a kind of ease that suggests the clothes belong to her rather than the other way around. Insider magazine named her 2025 style moments as some of her best ever: the low-cut blazer that was her most daring look of the year, the blue La Linea sweater with Veronica Beard flared jeans at the Invictus Games in Vancouver, the breezy California looks on her Netflix show with Love Meghan. And in November 2025, the Harper's Bazaar cover. Dior. Jonathan Anderson's Spring-Summer 2026 collection. Tiffany & Co. earrings from the Blue Book collection. One of the most coveted magazine covers of the year. This is not the fashion record of someone being rejected by the industry. This is the fashion record of someone the industry keeps dressing, keeps photographing, keeps putting on covers. And yet, the conversation around Meghan and fashion is never quite that simple. If you want the full picture of what is really happening between Meghan and the luxury fashion world, subscribe to Royal Report Daily right now. Because what comes next is the part that makes this story genuinely fascinating. Now let us talk about Dior specifically. Because the relationship between Meghan and this particular house has a documented history that is worth understanding carefully. In 2023, media outlets reported that Meghan was in negotiations to become what they described as the new face of Dior. It seemed plausible. She had worn Dior pieces. She had the global profile. She had the kind of aspirational image that luxury houses spend enormous amounts of money trying to create. But Dior responded quickly and directly. The brand issued a statement making clear there was no contract and no recent contact with Meghan. No discussions. No negotiations. No deal. The rumors, however plausible they seemed, were not true. And that denial, from one of fashion's most powerful houses, issued clearly and publicly, created a narrative that has followed Meghan ever since. Style commentator and fashion writer writing for Style on the Dot in November 2025 analyzed Meghan's Harper's Bazaar Dior cover moment with striking directness. She wrote that Meghan has what she described as a fraught relationship with Dior, marked by rumors, refusals, and public distancing. She wrote that the tailored fabric does not offer her credibility. She described the cover as an expensive demonstration of how little a brand name can buy when genuine acceptance is not for sale. Those are sharp words. They are one critic's view, not a consensus. But they reflect something real about how a significant portion of the fashion industry perceives the gap between Meghan wearing Dior and Meghan being embraced by Dior as a long-term partner. Wearing a brand on a magazine cover and being contracted as the face of that brand are two very different things. The first is a styling decision. The second is a relationship. And the distinction matters enormously in how the fashion world measures influence. Like this video right now if this is giving you a picture of Meghan's fashion story you have never seen told honestly before. And subscribe to Royal Report Daily, because what comes next is where the real tension in this story lives. Here is the central question that the fashion industry has been quietly debating about Meghan for years. Is she a fashion icon or a fashion-adjacent celebrity? And the distinction is more meaningful than it might sound. A fashion icon is someone the industry itself crowns. Someone whose relationship with clothes goes beyond wearing them correctly. Someone who shapes the conversation, influences designers, creates cultural moments that the industry credits to her rather than to the houses she is wearing. Diana was a fashion icon. She influenced silhouettes. She made choices that designers still reference decades later. Her clothes told the story of her transformation from shy girl to global force in ways that the industry recognized and celebrated as genuine. Catherine is a fashion icon, or at least well on her way to becoming one, because her choices consistently drive what ordinary people actually buy. The so-called Kate effect is documented. When Catherine wears something, it sells out. Designers specifically want her association because it moves product at every price point. Meghan occupies a more complicated position. She is undeniably stylish. Her choices are consistently sophisticated. She has real taste and a real eye for clothes. But the Meghan effect, the documented economic impact of her wearing something, has been less consistent than Catherine's. And in the world of luxury fashion, where the value of a celebrity association is calculated in real commercial terms, that inconsistency matters. The Australia trip in April 2026 illustrated this perfectly. She wore a Karen G dress during a visit to a homeless services charity, and the moment was widely photographed and covered. But the wider fashion coverage of the trip was mixed. Some outlets described her looks as polished and appropriate. Others noted moments where the choices felt misaligned with the charitable purpose of the visit. In fashion, context is everything. And when a woman with Meghan's level of global attention makes choices that generate mixed reactions, the industry notices. Now let us talk about what Meghan is actually building. Because the most interesting fashion story around her in 2025 and 2026 is not about which houses will or will not dress her. It is about as ever. Her own brand. Her own product. Her own creative identity expressed through food, lifestyle, and design. Insider called it Meghan expanding her post-royal footprint. Harper's Bazaar framed it as building something with a strong sense of purpose. Meghan herself described it in her interview as finding confidence in the messy, unpolished parts of the creative process. What she is building with as ever is something that the fashion world's gatekeepers cannot grant or withhold. Because it is hers, not borrowed from a house, not dependent on a designer relationship, not vulnerable to a denial or a statement distancing. She is creating a brand that, if it succeeds, will be measured not by whose front row she sits in, but by how many people buy what she makes. And that is a fundamentally different game from the one being played in the luxury fashion houses of Paris. The question of whether Dior will ever formally partner with Meghan, whether the relationship between them will ever move from magazine styling to genuine long-term collaboration, remains genuinely open. Fashion relationships change. Houses change creative directors. Jonathan Anderson at Dior is a different conversation from what came before. And the industry has a long history of complicated relationships eventually finding their moment. Do not go anywhere. Subscribe to Royal Report Daily and turn on notifications, because what comes next is the most honest assessment of where Meghan and the fashion world actually stand that you will find anywhere. Let us be completely honest about what the evidence shows. Dior has not banned Meghan. There is no documented evidence of any such ban. She wore Dior on the cover of Harper's Bazaar in November 2025. She has been photographed in Dior pieces on multiple occasions. Brands do not put people they have banned on the covers of the world's most prestigious fashion magazines. What is true is that the 2023 ambassador rumors were denied. What is true is that fashion commentators have noted a tension between Meghan's aspirations within the luxury fashion world and the industry's willingness to fully embrace her. What is true is that a meaningful gap exists between being dressed by a house and being contracted by a house. What is also true is that Meghan's fashion identity is genuinely evolving. The Paris Fashion Week appearance at Balenciaga in October 2025 was her first ever. It was a genuine debut in a space she had never entered before. It generated enormous coverage. It demonstrated confidence and ease in an environment that is famously difficult to navigate. And it showed a woman who is clearly not retreating from the fashion world's scrutiny, but moving toward it. On her own terms, in her own time, in her own way. That is not the picture of someone being shut out. It is the picture of someone still in the process of defining exactly where she fits. And in fashion, where identity is always more complicated than any single garment or any single front row appearance, that process is the most interesting story of all. Let us zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Because the story of Meghan and fashion is ultimately not really about Dior at all. It is about identity. What does Meghan Markle represent in 2026? Before she married Harry, she was an actress. A working professional in the entertainment industry with a developing public profile and a clearly sophisticated personal style. As a working royal, she was the Duchess of Sussex, her fashion choices subject to palace approval, royal protocol, and the specific requirements of representing the monarchy. Since leaving, she has been trying to answer a question that very few people in history have ever had to answer. Who am I when I am not defined by the institution I left or the role I gave up? And fashion, because it is one of the most visible and immediate expressions of identity that exists, is the arena where that question is being answered most publicly. The Harper's Bazaar cover with Dior was not just a styling choice. It was a statement, a declaration that she belongs in this conversation, that she is not a former royal or a lifestyle influencer or a celebrity brand. She is a woman with genuine aesthetic vision and the authority to express it at the highest level. Whether the fashion world agrees, whether the gatekeepers of Paris's most powerful houses decide to fully open those doors, is still being determined. But Meghan is no longer waiting for the answer. She is out there every season, in every appearance, in every carefully chosen look, making her own case. And in fashion, as in life, the people who keep showing up eventually get heard. Here is what we know for certain. Meghan Markle is one of the most photographed and written about women in fashion right now. Every look she wears generates global coverage. Every appearance, from the Invictus Games to Paris Fashion Week to the Australia trip, is analyzed, documented, and discussed by millions of people. She wore Dior on one of the most prestigious magazine covers of 2025. She debuted at Paris Fashion Week in looks that every major fashion outlet covered extensively. She launched her own lifestyle brand. She is building something. Whether the luxury fashion houses eventually decide to formally partner with her, whether the gap between wearing their clothes and being contracted by them closes, is a story still being written. But the version of Meghan Markle who arrived in that Balenciaga front row in October 2025, confident, alone, in white silk, stopping the room, is not the same version who left Frogmore Cottage in 2020 with no roadmap for what came next. She has grown into her post-royal identity with more grace and more deliberateness than most people expected. And whatever Dior ultimately decides, the fashion world's relationship with Meghan Markle is far from over. This is Royal Report Daily. And this story, like the best fashion, is still in progress. That is all for tonight's investigation on Royal Report Daily. If this video made you think, made you feel, or made you see the story differently, hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second and it means everything to this channel. Subscribe if you have not already and turn on notifications because we post new investigations every week and you do not want to miss what is coming next. Share this video with one person who follows the royal story because the more people who know the real truth, the better. I'm your host. This has been Royal Report Daily. Stay informed, stay royal, and I will see you in the next one. Dior dressed her for the cover. The industry is still deciding what that means. Subscribe to Royal Report Daily and be here when the fashion world finally makes up its mind.